What's all 2 foot mice because planting no they eat like rice. Living in a Bobby wrong and nothing nice. Life no have no value but death's got a price. What's all 2 foot mice? Planting no they eat like rice. Surviving to me, it's my crowning achievement. Now my main objective is just to stay on the pavement. I see cats go from showity to obscurity. Self-inflicted mental enslavement. All I ever needed was just a little taste. No, I'm after the paper like Gregory at Chase. The industry is trying to welcome me back like Mace. All bad boys, don't watch your face. I'm getting into cats' pockets before they go get in mine. I spit 82 balls before the real player could bust a rhyme. And the mom's to shine is like a mom's of mine. Big ups for all my cats on the grind. Rapping ain't easy, but I've done put in my bridge. It's like the devil's playground, you can't be scared or timid. One life I've got, many lives I'll give. Cold talk, you know, we keep it frigid. BX 168. Gerard, but I treat the Big Apple like yard. We could do this my way, we could do this hard. Back off slowly or start talking to God. If it ain't assets or plastics, you ain't got no money. If it ain't high grade, you're not rolling the bunny. If it ain't litter, it ain't sweet like honey. All thanks to Jah, even my nights is sunny. You could have $1 in a dream, but you've got to be asleep. You could be the president, you just got to pick the right seat. You can't be friends with everyone you meet. Ain't nothing nice in the NYC street. But if the devil offered you water, would you die of thirst? If you've seen an old lady, would you snatch her purse? Would you mind being second if you couldn't be first? Would you mind clapping once as I rate this verse? And I do what I do like I'm doing it for a feature. You be the creature, reverse your polarity, go against your nature. See how many of these niggas is really gonna hate you. Living in a Bobby wrong, I don't know nothing nice. Life no have no value, but death's got a price. What's all 2 foot mice because planting no they eat like rice. Living in a Bobby wrong, I don't know nothing nice. Life no have no value, but death's got a price. What's all 2 foot mice? Planting no they eat like rice. I'll make you black.
Yo, what's up?
You'll be
right, yeah,
like
I tried to get on early.
At the end of this code, you can't dangle.
Like,
I'll store
boy's not doing good tonight, the chairman. So,
oh my gosh,
yeah, man, he's not doing too well.
Oh man,
so I guess you got to hold it down for him.
Wow, hell.
I know, man, I know. And you know, he if he say, you know, the feel good, that not sound right, you know.
Yeah, well,
a man like that, you know.
He's a soldier, you
man
know.
Like that, and the man say, boy, he said when he did it for the Valentine's thing. He said when a kid came to him, and the kid was, you know, kind of ill, and he's telling the kid like, you know, like chill a little bit, but you know how kids are.
Right.
And he pick up something, man. But they say no feel too good at all, and you know, no man like that, you know.
Yeah, well, you gotta check on it.
Yeah. Because I asked him if he had a fever, and he said yeah, and that's the public kind of like kind of frightened me a little bit.
Yeah.
So you monitor it as we go along, you know. So prayers up for him, you know.
Yeah, you gotta check on it because COVID is not
Hi,
over.
Mr. Leonard. How are you doing?
Good night, sir. Fine, thank you. Good night, Mr. Marvin.
Good night, Mr. Brackett. How are you, sir?
Fairly well, sir. Thank God.
All right.
Mr. Morrison will be here in a little while. He had a meeting, but we got a couple things that we could discuss in the meantime until he come in, you know, and then you guys could take it from there.
Mr. CY, you was making mention about somebody who was sick. The
chairman.
Oh.
The chairman.
I hope he's all right, though.
Yeah. Prayers up for him, you know.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, but there was another mass shooting again the other day. You know, Dodge.
Yeah, in the United States.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mr. Leonard should know more a little bit about that.
Well, I have a question for Leonard.
It's a school. It was done by a school at a school.
Oh yeah, it was a school. It was a college or high school or something.
College environment.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Judge.
Yeah. I was going to ask in terms of mortality. I often hear this narrative that there has never been a war on U.S. soil. The closest thing that came to it was the 9/11 tragedy. But when you look at what I'm calling the sort of enemy within, when you look at gun violence, I am wondering what the numbers are. I can't remember what the count was in terms of deaths for 9/11. I'm sure it's over 3,000, or I may have heard that. But I think when you add up these tragedies that happen very frequently in the United States, the kind of civilian-born gun violence, Mr. Brackett, I don't know if you have any perspective on this, if anybody has been keeping tab on it in terms of what the annual death toll is from gun violence within the United States.
There are institutions that keep tabs on that kind of stuff. They try to get the government to sponsor organizations or use some of the government entities to track those things, but under Republican governance, they have always resisted. So I don't personally have a tap on the exact numbers per annum and the total overall, but I have a different perspective as to the point that you brought up about this enemy within and this gun violence process that's ongoing.
Right.
A lot of people here in the United States, many political scientists, many individuals in high rank in terms of the societal knowledge and understanding about these things, psychologists, psychiatrists, a whole wide spectrum of fields. Look at this process from different vantage points. And I personally have come to a conclusion from when I first came here. Not too long after that I got here, I started putting together some dots and I started adding them up, and I realized that what we are currently seeing as of today, that we are having this discussion, is that it is something that most Americans don't want to accept or acknowledge as being a reality.
Right.
That is that, for example, when they had this the war of the states among themselves, the Revolutionary War.
Yes.
Not the Independence War, back farther earlier. I'm talking about the war during the days of President Lincoln with the South and the North.
Is this a civil war?
Right. What happens is that there was a cessation of open hostility between the two sides, meaning the Confederates from South and the Unionist-minded people from the North, because they wanted to maintain the Union. The Confederates wanted to go on their own and make their own country, add up their own states that could continue having their free slave labor, by which they were actually becoming rich. And they wanted to just continue their old ways. And they went into a war, not specifically because of the slavery, but motivated because of slavery.
Right.
The end result is that war had a cessation in terms of open hostility, but not a cessation in terms of ongoing hostility. And what we're experiencing today, for example, this criminal mindset of some of the white people, and in recent days a few black people are as well getting involved in it, starts from those posses that used to go out and hunt black people that used to run away from the slave farms. They used to be empowered by the slave owners and the authority of the day to go out as a posse to hunt down these black slaves. The end result is that it is still ongoing as of today date. There's what you call, the Confederates, they said after they lost the war and they had to cease because, they were going to be beaten too far down into the ground. They realized that it's American against Americans, and they realized, let's draw the line and make peace, no?
Right.
But the peace with the black people never came about in terms of the Southern mindset. They always continued to wage hostility against the blacks. That's where eventually that thing with the Ku Klux Klan came out of. You know, they start putting on robes, white sheets over their heads so that they couldn't be identified as to who the people were, when in fact they were some of the leading members of the society.
Right.
And as an end result, we now have today a lot of these people are still holding grudges and hatefulness towards the black people who turn around from being slaves to being military people on behalf of the people who persecute and oppress them. So they are now oppressing from then until now. They have this ongoing process where within certain states that are governed by certain mindset of the same people, they don't want no health for their black people. They don't want no food stamps for their black people. They don't want nothing that is government sponsored. Even when under Obama, they were giving them free, they give the southern states free money to help them. They still didn't want to accept the money. Why? Because the conditions on accepting those money would be that the money would be spent for all the people in their society. They don't want the black people and get no benefits out or nothing. So in order for them not to get, they prefer to reject those type of programs. And when in fact there are more white people poor here in America than black people.
I would say two things in relation to gun violence and the terrible toll it takes in life and in terms of maiming and injury. I find it very paradoxical that America was founded on the precepts that people are prosecuted in England, and I guess in Great Britain, the British Isles. And so they fled oppression and came to America. But what I find paradoxical and indeed regrettable is that they started their own genocide the moment they set foot in America. That is what I find very paradoxical, that they left an oppressive system, but they created their own in very short order. And there seemed to have been no cessation to the violence. My initial knee-jerk is really that I know who suffered greatly were not only black people in terms of slavery and the violence that came with that, but the quote-unquote American Indians suffered greatly. The numbers vary widely. Some people chart it down to about 20 million dead during the march from the East Coast to the West Coast in terms of colonizing America. Whatever the numbers is, it sort of wiped out an entire civilization to the extent that there are no structures where the American Indian actually has a standing place that they govern. There's really none. They ended up in reservations. So there's a tremendous cost to this. You will recall, Mr. Brackett, that our colleague, Mr. Morrison, is of the opinion that guns do not kill people. It's an old Republican narrative. And he's obviously right, but the equation is much more complex than gun and people. There's gun, there is motive, and there's culture. And I'm saying that, Mr. Brackett, because I was watching a documentary very, very recently in which I believe one of the Scandinavian countries, it could be Sweden. Guns are freely available, Mr. Brackett. If me and you were to take a gander over in Sweden right now, we don't need a gun license. We can go to a gun shop and rent a gun, and we can go about our business. Now, I'm saying that to say that the loose availability of guns does not equal high death toll. I think that there's a culture of violence in the United States that when you add gun to the equation, it leads to great suffering. So there's really no simple answer. But I think that at some point, one has to ask the obvious questions. Is there a need for gun control? I do know that in former British colonies, including the United States, if you look at Australia and you look at New Zealand and you look at Canada, there are gun controls. If you look at Britain itself, there are gun controls. So there's obviously a relationship between gun control and gun tragedies. And I think unless and until the American populace, which is not monolithic, unless they see it as a national imperative to rein in gun violence, the slaughter, regrettably, especially of innocent lives, will continue. You know?
I agree with you on all those points above, and I'll add a little bit more of what I was intimating earlier, and that is that there's a mindset in this country, even before the Constitution was drafted. They're what you call the Federalists, who are some of the same people who are organized to help put together the Constitution. And they wanted the Constitution to reflect a certain mindset, which was theirs, of course. And we are looking at it today as I'm explaining to you the background of this issue as what we're looking at in terms of where it came from. They wanted to put in the Constitution this concept, which a lot of them espouse today in modern society, that under the Second Amendment, you're entitled to bear arms. Everybody in the country is entitled to bear arms. And while that is in the Constitution itself, it is not to be interpreted the way they are interpreting it, and which causes the outflow of all this gun violence. That is that they feel like to have their arms and to use their arms when they want, against who they want, especially people who are less than them, who are not their equal, to start with account to their mindset and philosophies. They continue to believe that by joining the police force, well, I want to change the way how I was going to express that, to express it a little bit more forthcoming and more direct. Some of those people whom I referred to earlier when I said they were authorized to go and hunt down the slaves, they were deputized to do this job of hunting down the slaves who were running away and bringing them back to their master, and or if they can't get them back alive, bring them back dead. Or in some instances, they never even brought them back. They didn't even dealt with it. They just wasted them. As a matter of fact, there was a time when some of them went all the way up to New York and hijacked people from New York and bring them back to the South. But the bottom line of the point is that these people are hell-bent in the present American society as it's structured, with their own mindset from previous grievances that they believe that they are justified to hold on to and maintain. And they are causing the havoc that we are now witnessing today. Especially like today, one of the young man that killed those 9 people the last time, he just got his sentence read to him today. He was convicted, of course, before, no? Today he was sentenced, I think it was today or yesterday, was sentenced to life in prison without parole after he killed 9 people, 9 black people. Now he's saying, well, he's sorry that he shouldn't have killed those people just because they were black. How does that bring those people back? Or how does that mitigate his sorrow for the sorrow of those people's lives lost and their family members being destroyed?
And that's a very legitimate moral and ethical question, Mr.
Understandable, but the guy today was the guy yesterday was a black guy. He was black. The shooter yesterday was black. So intervening the color thing in it.
No. I'm just a minute, Mr. C.Y. The person that I'm talking about is Reddit or something like that they call him, huh? I don't remember his name. So anyhow, I wouldn't debate the point or argue the point, because I'm just going from what I hear on the news, no?
I would say.
Well, you can welcome Mr. Morrison is here, so let's welcome Mr. Morrison because he's here. I think congratulations is in order for Mr. Morrison. I think something special happened for him today. So I don't know if you want to, you know.
Happy anniversary, Mr. Morrison.
Oh yeah, anniversary for what?
I don't know what it was. I'm just trying to say. I see a little thing in the air there today. I'm like, okay. You want to
what was it?
You want to put
us in on that? At least I don't know.
I'm the last to know on it. I have to look at it and see what's going on.
Mr. Morrison, you get the gist of what it is that we are discussing. I think you came in midstream in some of the thought processes of myself and Mr. Brackett.
Sorry about that.
I wanted to ask Mr. Brackett. The United States is big and diverse.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a reason for hope? Is there a reason for hope at the state level, at the county level, at the national level? What do you see going forward? Can there be redress, improvement in terms of the outcome in relation to gun violence? Can there be less tragedy and less slaughter and less loss of life? What is your views about this?
Are you asking me or Mr. Brackett?
No, I was asking Mr. Brackett. I don't know if he heard me.
Okay.
Is there hope in Mr. Brackett?
No, I thought you was bringing in Mr. Morrison just now, and I thought maybe the question was going to him.
I just wanted you to respond so that then
me?
Mr. Morrison could get a gist and then
okay.
Conversation after we get your response.
Yes, sir. Thank you. What I would say to that is, so long as we're alive, there's always hope. You know, I mean, we can't just take it for granted that because the crimes keep going on, as I've told you, it's been going on from as far back as I tried to intimate earlier. You know, even from before the revolution and from the time of the slavery, when they were hunting down these black people, they were empowering people to go and do the hunting. And in our modern society, we have now what you call the authorities, such as the sheriffs, the police officers, and all these other entities in which these very citizens of the country borrow themselves into and use and abuse the powers vested in them. As a matter of fact, they have a special category now that I don't remember the phrase that they call it, but some kind of immunity, you know, that police officers are almost, especially in the past. Recently, they have been prosecuting some of them, but in the past, it was very hard to get even a case open against any police officer. Why? Because they used to always claim, you know, justifiable use of force, or that the person was high on drug, or that this and that. You know, there was always a case made for them not to be prosecuted. Now we're having a little change of the guard, and some of them are getting prosecuted for what they're doing. Why? Because they have private cameras on. Yes, sir.
That's part of the problem, Mr. Brackett. The law enforcement has visited grief on especially minorities. But I don't know that is
with impunity.
That is responsible for the major death toll. I don't think so. But I want to ask Mr. Morrison the very question that I kind of posed to you. Mr. Morrison, do you see a trend in terms of gun violence in the United States? Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it flatlining? Do you see any solutions in sight? Are there any afoot that you would comment on?
Yeah. It's definitely going up. It's definitely going up. All indications are that gun violence is going up. But I think that is based on per capita. If we look in the past history of this country, it was much more violent on the streets. You know, when we go back to Prohibition, when we go back to the time and period of mobster ruling Chicago and New York and some other places, Louisiana, the violence in those places were always significant. and more innocent people were always caught in the middle of those type of violence. And they had machine gun. They had machine gun in those days, and so whether it is becoming more random. I think the violence and so it seems to be with no cause that these violence are being ushered upon people, just innocent people. In the past, at least they were fighting for something that one could say avoid. You know, if you didn't visited a mobster's location and a restaurant that was connected with them, and you weren't running moonshine and things like that, you are more removed from it. So we have to look at it historically. It has always been a part of the American legacy, this gun violence.
Do you see, Mr. Morrison, any projects, programs at the various strata of government, in any state, in any city, in any county, that you believe is dedicated to getting a hold on this sad culture? It's a part of the American experience. Do you see any program or project that gives you hope?
It's running around. Yeah, I don't really, and I think as long as America has the culture of gun ownership, which I don't see going away. I don't see that going away at all. Americans, I think President Obama described it as they are locked into their guns and their Bible, right? Something of that sort. And I think that will continue to be part of it as the constitutions allow us to have guns. But that's a different psychology when someone goes out there and create this mayhem upon his fellow citizens, just start shooting with no cause or with some cause in their crazy mind, that you're either taking from me what belongs to me, or you're different from me because you have a different sexual orientation or color or culture or something of that sort. So I believe that the efforts of the states are limited because they cannot do they cannot undo what the Constitution justly allow. They can make it more difficult to get a gun. Some states could enforce background checks, and some have. Some states could impose age limits, and some have. And so there are some of those things that could be put in play. But the outright ban, and some states have also put away that you cannot have those equipment that makes a standard gun become an automatic type of gun. But until we get some standardized practices, because people are able to, while the state may ban it, and some people are able to buy those same type of stuff through the internet and place and activities like that, get it shipped to them from overseas and different places. And so they still are able to do it. So it becomes a little bit more difficult, but with someone with true intent to do something, it seems like that nothing's that will be there that bars them. And as long as the Constitution allows it, and as I said, I don't see that changing for gun ownership, it's always going to be a problem. And it's always been a part of the American experience, as you said, Mr. Myvie. Gun violence has always been, if we look at cowboy and Indian, and we look at all these historical markers, we see that the gun has been an inherent part of the American experience.
Well, I wanted to your credit, I'm coming to you right now. I'm like chairing by default. I'm coming to you right now, Mr.
Where's our chairman?
Our chairman is a bit sick. He's under the weather.
Okay.
We hope the best for him. I will give him a call after the show.
Okay.
I was making the point, Mr. Morrison, that there's not a straight line relationship between gun ownership, the availability of guns, and violence. And I believe that you had made the point earlier that, in a sense, the whole Republican rhetoric, the whole NRA rhetoric, not the American rhetoric, but the whole NRA rhetoric, that guns do not kill people, people kill people, is a truism. It's obvious, but obviously context has to be brought in. And I was making the point that I believe it was Sweden that guns are even more freely available in the United States. You don't need a license. You could go to Sweden right now. You could jump on a plane and go to Sweden right now and rent a gun and go shooting.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, obviously, what it is. And there might be some controls there, but I'm making the point that the culture of hunting down Indians and hunting down minorities, and in fact, probably Sweden is more homogeneous than America, certainly racially.
Most definitely.
And I think the history of hatred and persecution is not there. So, but the point is that in the case of America, I believe that it's a foregone conclusion that gun control can be effective. It is needed. We see it work in other jurisdictions. We see it work in Great Britain. We see it work in Australia. We see it work in Japan. If you look at the death toll per capita,
I don't.
It is not the same as in the United States per capita, no. So,
right. But I don't think the issue should be gun control. I think it should be primarily people need to get training with guns. People need to get certified for and disqualified when conditioned in their personal life change, and that kind of stuff. And that would take away some of the guns from the crazies, but we never know when somebody's going to flip, right? Somebody is mad with their spouse and they go to the office and they shoot up everybody that they think their spouse was influencing their decision of the spouse to lose them.
But wouldn't you say, Mr. Morrison, that integrating responsible practices with guns are a subset of gun control in and of itself?
Well, yeah, but I don't see that. I don't see that blocking a qualified person. You think? I don't think the people that shouldn't have a gun should have a gun. So I don't see that as gun control. I see that as it is a form. It is a form of removing guns.
You're restricting access. You're restricting access in a way, and you're also promoting responsible use.
Yeah, but that's not gun control. That's not gun control in the term of how we'd say gun control. The people that shouldn't have guns should not have a gun. The people that does not qualify, I believe there should be some training. I believe there should be some assessment, and people should be more free to say. Go ahead.
There should be administrative processes in place to make sure that the crazies and people that are vulnerable would not have access to either guns or high-powered guns. Would that be a reasonable observation on my part? I want to come to Mr. Brackett after you respond.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. I don't believe that the term gun control should be used such broadly. Gun control is very specific to sort of remove guns from the American public or any citizens of any country, just by declaring that the populace should not have guns. That is the measure I see of gun control. You have to prove a use for it.
Gun control.
I have a business, and therefore I should have a gun. I think you should have a gun whether or not you have a business, and if you just choose to want to have a gun. So that's how I view gun control. To qualify the right to have a gun is not, in my estimation, gun control. I think that's a practice that should be followed throughout. And if we do that, we will remove and avoid some of the incidents we have been seeing of late. Because a lot of these things people are just so, American society is a lot more strong-headed and wound up than probably most other countries, just because of the nature of our competition and the nature of our people. and so forth. I mean, Americans are some of the nicest people, but it seems that there's very little. I don't hear people getting mad with people in other countries and going off on them.
Well, I think that they do, but they don't have access to guns and bullets. But let me ask Mr. Brackett to weigh in on his understanding and his perspective on gun control, what it is, and whether or not he sees it as a tool that may or may not be effective. Mr. Brackett?
Yes, sir. Guns in America has been, is, and will continue to be a thorn in the American psyche and mental health. The problem in America is that you have more guns than people. Mm-hmm. And the majority of the people in the country don't even own a gun. So what does that say? There are some people that have much more guns than they really need to have, some for recreational purposes, at least that's what they claim.
Who's others going to determine I have more gun than I need, Mr. Brackett?
I'm sorry?
Who's going to determine I have more gun than I need?
No, I'm just saying, I'm making that statement, sir. Okay. I'm the one making that statement based on my own knowledge and understanding of 20 and that's why I started the statement the way I did, no?
Okay.
That is to say that in America, there's more guns than people.
Yes.
Some people and the gun owners own more gun. Let me say it a different way. More than half the population of America, I would subscribe or I would state or I would say or intimate, does not own a gun or would like to own a gun. Mm-hmm. But there's a vast number of people, as big as America is, that not only would like to own a gun, but do possess guns, and in some instances possess many multiples or a large number of guns. Mm-hmm. You have those that claim themselves to be gun collectors, which is different from the average person on the street, or just like myself, or some other people who have maybe one or two. Mm-hmm. Those people are not going out there committing wanton crime or wanting their guns to go and commit wanton crime. Mm-hmm. So the people that are out there committing these major crimes are a small minority of the population.
Ownership. And many of these people that are committing these crimes, we know through just understanding them, they should not have a gun. Either at some point they may have had the
yes, but the NRA battles with the legal system here in this country, and the support that they have enabled them to stop people from getting their nose under the tent in terms of gun control or maybe gun violence control. I think that's the way it should be preferably stated: gun violence control, not just gun control.
Exactly.
Yes. It makes a major difference.
I think much more.
In a sense, I think is there a disparity between black people owning guns and white people owning guns? And Mr. Morrison,
well, it shouldn't be.
Mr. Morrison made an important point, because you need practice. You need to be able to handle the gun. A lot of people out here with guns and shooting, they don't know anything about being on the range or to handle a gun or anything. Yeah. But not to say anything, but you have some people who hunts in America. More white people hunt than black people. Am I correct or no?
Yeah,
I think correct statement or no?
I think that's a correct statement.
I think the problem is not in hunting. The problem is in hunting people instead of animals.
But they have an advantage, meaning that, and they stockpile guns because they talk about the zombie apocalypse. It might sound crazy to us, but they do. They have bunkers. They have, in case of, anything breaks out.
Mindset.
They're ready for civil war. We are not. We are at a disadvantage when it comes to certain things. But my point is, I see the rate of shootings nowadays as being a mental issue more than anything else. Because nobody in their right mind would go into school or in a church or places like these or a shopping mall and shoot it up. Yes. You have to be you gotta be like loony to do something like that. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that the people that do the shooting in those places, when you have the mass shooting, they don't shoot in their own homes?
They come
or in their
somewhere.
own community. They always go and do the damage somewhere else.
Yeah, because
I
it is
noticed
tied.
that.
It is tied
Grievance.
to
What is their grievance?
it is tied to some type of hatred, either race hatred, class hatred, or gender, or that type of bias. But you made a good point.
The gender hatred is big.
Yeah,
Because
but
they
you
would
made a
shoot up
good
an
point.
LBGD club, they would shoot up, space like that.
Yeah, Mr. Young, you made a good point about disparity of gun ownership between blacks and whites and probably some other races. And that is historical, because for a long time and continued through the entire process of American history, blacks have been denied gun. And there are times when they go and collect, in the past history, where they go and collect the guns from all black people. And they have created classes of felonies that prevent this entitled black people from gun ownership. It's mainly to do that in many instances. And so black people, for the most part, the ones that are not sophisticated, has a fearfulness of gun. There is also a class of criminal black people that have guns and misuses it, and uses it in tragic ways. And in most of the instances, the crime they commit and the victims of their crime are other black people. So the violence that black people face in many amounts is due to guns that are used in their neighborhoods against them by other black people.
Well, the issue is obviously politically charged. But do you, Mr. Morrison, believe that there's a national will to solve the issue? Do you believe?
I don't think so.
You don't think so either?
No, okay. I don't think so. And I don't
think...
That's
a good question, though. That's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good
question.
Because
ammunition sells. Ammunition sells. Gun sells.
Yeah.
As simple as it might sound.
Yeah. I don't think... I think there's a class and a culture, and even some people that may say 50% of people don't own guns. It's only 30% of Americans that own guns, and that, or maybe 20%, and those 20% owns 10 more guns than they they need, as Mr. Brackett was saying. I think that the issue mainly is that the gun culture as it is so part of the American culture that even that small percentage, you cannot move guns from homes and from families, because more than 50% favors gun ownership. You see, even though they don't own it, they don't want you to go and take away the guns from people that owns it.
Right.
And that's I don't think it's a problem. I think it's part of the American culture. It's part of the American eco, part of their beliefs.
You're talking about from Western days? From Western days?
I wanted to go. I wanted to go see. I wanted to go to Mr. Brackett, who at one point in the past had made the point that a gun owner should be confined to having access to a certain caliber, and maybe caliber is not the word, but he should be restricted from having access to highly lethal automatic
military equipment, basically.
Not meant for normal civilian interaction. He shouldn't have military grade weaponry. And I think it's a point well made, but I don't know if Mr.
Please
Brackett,
come back to me after you answer, Mr. Brackett.
I wanted Mr. Brackett to maybe bring this back to the floor in the context of our conversation tonight. Mr. Brackett?
Yes, sir. The issue of the type of weapons, whether semi-automatic or fully automatic, or whether it's a 45 or 50 caliber or whatever, the caliber of guns, is germane to the conversation. We can't dispel it, or we can't just have this conversation without addressing those. And that is to say, here in America, for example, there's very few instances where you have somebody using a 50 caliber weapon to shoot up a place. It's usually a 38, 45,
you have some
22.
You have some instances where they brought in some AKs and some
Yeah,
but that's not a 50 caliber.
Nah, maybe not a 50 caliber, but I mean, you
or
can't get a 50
you have a lot of people
like
in
that.
America. Yes, you have a lot of people in America, even though some people may not believe it. A lot of people own what you call military grade bazookas, or rocket launchers. As a matter of fact, some of the modern weapons them know that they're selling are equipped to hold rocket launching capabilities.
And people can build those things. The individual people can build those in a properly workshop. The explosive for those, the deployment for those.
Mr. Morrison, I don't know if Mr. Brackett is true, but you said you wanted to weigh in on on the issue of confining gun ownership to exclude a certain caliber.
Yeah, I believe that there should be, well, in general, I will say I don't think there should be a restriction on whether you should have the right to own an ARK 57 or a 50 caliber gun, as Mr. Brackett says, or any type. I believe that if you are trained in the use of that weapon, if you are responsible and such, that you may have entitlement to own that. And most people don't want that because it's not practical. You can't find a shooting range to go and use that or anything like that.
Mr. Morrison, I don't want to cut you off, but my question to you is: there's a cost to, obviously, somebody going berserk. I can't remember the Las Vegas shooting that happened. I believe it maybe 2017 or sometime, at the mass shooting where there's this guy that was kind of meek and mild and law abiding, and everybody knew that he loved guns. I believe that his wife went away, and this guy just had a weekend of unrestrained violence. He booked into a hotel and had these kind of bomb stock weapon. I don't even know what that means, but I think the general consensus is that is
it means you just hold it against you and
you're kind of upgrading a kind of weapon for mass destruction.
We know.
My question to you, Mr. Brackett, is: do you believe that society, in the interest of defending gun ownership, should be prepared to bear the cost of a guy who qualifies, in the past, going berserk? Do you believe that is a cost that society should bear and tolerate?
Well, I don't think that it should be.
I don't know if you see my point, Mr. Because the guy might be saying today, or the guy might be saying 10 years ago, when he began stockpiling guns. But at some point he flipped. And my question to you is whether or not that might not be a cause for pause, and basically say, you know what, even a guy that was saying 10 years ago, he might assume another psychological profile. And so we need to prevent anybody from having guns of a certain destructive.
I will answer that question, Mr. Maivit. From my perspective, if you are a professional engineer, if you are a doctor, there's a renewal prescription that you must comply with the state and do units to maintain your qualification. You have to do certain type of recertify, reapplication, not application, but most of it is in our profession is for fees. They want to get more fees, but there's a point where they come back to you again and sort of kind of reassess where you are. And so I believe in gun ownership, there needs to be that. It shouldn't just be a blanket. It should be maybe every 5 years they send you a assessment kind of profile. And some people may lie, but it should be clever enough that if you fill it out, they can get a reading through some type of algorithm whether you still qualify for that gun ownership. And I think that may capture some of the people, like you said, that move from qualify to disqualify.
Right.
And it may
Some
not
of them
capture all of them in the
unpredictables.
time frame, but I
Right,
think
the
that
unpredictables.
assessment should be part of gun ownership. It shouldn't just be I
Right.
own a gun today and I have gun ownership for the next 100
Well,
years or something like that.
That's a reasonable. That
why?
would be a reasonable middle ground,
All right.
Mr.
So I'll go to Mr.
Morrison.
Brackett,
But
and then I'll
yes,
go
sir.
to CY because CY has joined the conversation. Your comments on that point, Mr. Brackett?
Yes, sir. What Mr. Morrison just stipulated would be a reasonable middle ground, but the hawks of the Second Amendment would not tolerate and or allow him that to come under the tent because they feel like once something like that gets accepted, there's no telling where it's going to end. And that's the kind of mindset that they use and games that they play. They're not getting nothing done overall because it's the gun lobby that's behind that kind of perspective.
If CY, can we have your observation, your analysis, and your input on this point, Mr. CY? CY is still a part of our panel. CY, have you gone? All right, you seem like he's gone off.
I'm here.
Yeah. I'm asking you if you want to make an input based on the conversation, especially on the last point.
No. I'm good. I'm soaking it in.
Do you believe that CY, and I'm kind of changing gears a little bit here. I saw a feature on Facebook maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago where there was this black guy, two black guys in separate instances carrying. One of them is a kind of military guy and a friend of mine on Facebook. And he's a kind of open carry guy. But there's this other guy that I believe was somewhere, could have been in California. And he was like posing for this crowd to say, all right, I have to be prepared for not only when tragedy comes randomly, but I have to be prepared for the organized fascist neo-Nazi because a time of war is coming. So my question to you, CY, whether or not you think there's some legitimacy to people taking care of their own, you're not going to catch me, you're not going to shoot me, and I'm not going to be prepared. Based on your input earlier, CY, that black people should arm themselves. And I'm saying that tongue in cheek because there's not only black people there, it's not only a black and white country. So, but to your earlier point, do you believe that black people should begin to arm themselves in at least an equivalent way to the extremists? See why?
No, I'm here. I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm thinking more along the line of what Mr. Morrison is saying, first of all, right? Because it's training. Training comes from the beginning. Because to me, I think, okay, it's ammunition is sales. America is a capitalistic country. So I see they're calling it right now a proxy war with Ukraine and Russia, right? Proxy war meaning America is involved in a proxy war because America is supplying ammunitions to Ukraine. It wasn't supposed to start off as that. It was supposed to be just logistical help and help with training and stuff like that. Now it's past that now. So my whole idea of the whole thing with concerning guns is it's all about sales. You could have at one time they were saying that the police was placing guns in hoods in neighborhoods in Chicago for the violent part of it, right? But that's in a black neighborhood now, right? But they were putting cachet of guns, like how they was putting out bricks when it was time during the riots, he was putting out bricks. So to me, I think these guys have an agenda, not only for population control, but I mean they have an agenda in the black neighborhood and countries such as Belize, Central America, and all that. Because guns, where do Belize get guns from? We don't manufacture guns.
Yeah. Right.
We don't manufacture guns.
Bricks,
so where
when you say bricks, CY, what do you mean? Can you translate that? When you say
I mean it was actually putting out. During the time of the riots, they was actually finding cement bricks at locations for people. It's just right there for their taking to go and break it. Bus stores and all that. Where did they come from? I'm saying these people have a agenda. We play checkers, they play chess. So the gun issue is about money. First of all, that's why the NRA is in the business of making money. So there will always be guns out there that's not going to the correct people, as Mr. Morrissey has claimed. Guns is not going to the people who's supposed to get it.
One of the things that we have to remember is that there was a time and period when Black people armed themselves. The Black Panthers was armed, and the government and the FBI and all of them find ways to criminalize these people.
Correct.
So
Good example.
At some
Correct.
point,
Correct.
Potential.
Correct, Mr. G. Correct.
Having ownership because they slap them with all type of felony and stuff. So there's always in the part of the government, the system, have always done whatever it can to take away an equal ability to possess a weapon equal to what the other class of citizens carry. So we always have to look at that and like CY said, it's an active and very prevalent and continuously dynamic action on the part of some. In the past, it was the FBI, it was local police, it was local militias or organizations that did it. Who is doing it now? I am not quite sure, but I bet you it has not gone away.
Very good.
On the point that Mr. CY was saying,
it's 8:55. I want to go to Mr. Brackett to ask him to give us some concluding comments on this point, and then CY, and then I want to switch gears because, maybe we have another half hour on this show. We'll have to rely on CY to tell us when the time is up or drawing near. So, Mr. Brackett, you have any concluding comments on the gun issue? And then we go to CY.
Firstly, though, I would like to point out that when you ask him the question about the bricks, what Mr. CY was referring to is a specific scenario here when they were having some riots. You had what you call agents provocateurs, right? That were mixed up within the group of the people that was doing their demonstration.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what they did is that these people came in with pickup truck loads of bricks and pre-positioned those bricks. And when the people were doing their demonstration, these bricks were available for some people who knew where the bricks were to gain access to it and to use them to stone windows and break the windows from the establishment, in the area where they were carrying on their demonstration. And that got blamed on the people who were what they call it, the Black Lives Matter group, got accused of being the one doing that. When in fact it was some police officers and other people who were involved with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a complicated issue. Enough. It's a complicated issue.
Yeah.
Is.
If some people brought drugs into the neighborhood, into the hoods, and made it available, crack and all those things, we have to.
That's what happened.
That there's always an agenda by a sect of people.
That's my point.
That works to undermine the credibility of others.
That's my
and
point.
To kind of make them more in the realm of criminals.
And it was supported from the highest levels of the governance of this country.
Yes.
I mean, just to put that out there as a reality.
I think so.
You have any,
no. Not only thing, Mr. CY. It was a fact. It was established and was clarified by the press.
It has been proven over time how Iran-Contra was funded. I don't
think
right. anywhere about how that
the guns was taken from here, from the Midwest, and dropped off over Honduras while they were flying empty back from Honduras. They went straight to Panama, picked up the drugs, bring it back, and put it into the inner cities them here in this country.
Yeah.
So it was a war with drugs on people. It wasn't a war on drugs by people.
Yes, the Quran. Yes.
It was the fun of Lebanon.
There was a lot of guns involved in that one.
See why you have any concluding comment on this before we move on? See why?
Say it again.
You have any concluding comment on this whole gun? The gun.
I mean, we're good. We could take the next step.
One of the things I want to talk about is the situation with the leader of the opposition in Belize not attending the meeting with the visit.
That was disgraceful.
Of the president of Cuba, who has been a friend of Belize, and even before Belize was independent, for the last 50 plus years, they have supported Belize in every way possible. I'm reminded of what President Mandela said.
And they got a lot of assistance from them, right?
Yeah. I'm reminded of what President Mandela said.
Doctors and goods and stuff, yeah.
So I'm reminded of what President Mandela said when asked why he supports Cuba and Libya and those countries, and he says those countries not only supported our struggle and our cause with lip service, but they provided resources. And I see Cuba as a country that has provided vast amount of resources and friendship and a willingness when no one else in Latin America was willing to support the cause of these independence. They stepped forward, and their action brought other countries along to help us move into that direction. So while I have,
so you think it was egregious for him not to attend? You think that was
yes, I think it was an egregious and
he had his own agenda. His agenda of burnishing.
And I know what, and I kind of figure.
Let Mr. Morrison continue. Mr. Morrison, you got the floor, no?
Yeah. Okay.
I want you to conclude on your thought.
Yeah. And so I thought that the decision not to participate was a poor judgment, a lack of total insightfulness on foreign policies, and we cannot, as a country like Belize, carry the water for someone else, because our relationship with Cuba, Venezuela is a special kind of relationship, Taiwan, that benefits Belize tremendously. And we have to look out for our own interests. To say democracy has many meanings, but one of it is not just going to the polls and having election. Democracy goes greater than that. People in Russia vote more than people in any other country in the world. You're forced to go out and vote, right?
Yes. But the last time Putin had 100% of the vote, so I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He puts up.
I don't know what you're talking about.
He allows an opposition. He allows an opposition, but that opposition he knows is appointed by him. And I'm not talking. I'm not trying to compare that his system is perfect. I just wanted to say I know their system is corrupt. What I was pointing out is that just having elections is not the ultimate judge of democracy, and we see that here even in America when people are.
Okay, so what's the dispute? What's the dispute? Why didn't he go? Why is there a reason why? Why didn't he go to the summit?
I wanted to ask Mr. Morrison, do you think there's some ideological reason? Do you see any rationale and the cost of the Lou? They call him the Lou, the leader of the opposition, not showing up, Mr. Morrison? Yeah. I will come to Mr. Brackett after this, but I want to.
I see. I don't see a cost as him being leader of the opposition. I see a misguided tragedy if he becomes the leader of government. He becomes the prime minister, because I think that while we have to hold with great homage the special relationship Belize has with the United States of America for accommodating so many of its citizens and giving us an opportunity to live and work and be prosperous and be able to contribute to the development of Belize in the manner and means in which we can, we have to also be cognizant of the role that Cuba has played in the region of Belize, in the region of Africa, in the region of the Middle East and other places where it has contributed to true freedom of people against authoritarian system and systems that were totally unjust to the majority of those countries. Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, back to those old days, South Africa, those are real contributions. So when you blindly just say, oh, I'm about democracy and I'm against totalitarian, you have to also be thoughtful that those things are just coins and you can spend them in different ways.
Very good. Can we go to Mr. Brackett for his perspective on the lunar attending?
I think it was a travesty, and it was a personal issue to him rather than a national issue. Because had it been on a national level, even if he didn't know as much as what Mr. Morrison and everybody else here on this panel would know or be able to advocate, he should have appraised himself and or get counseling or advice or input from somebody else who knew a little better than himself. Regardless of whether he knew or didn't know, the bottom line is he made a choice. And the choice that he made was to disparage those people because of what he and other people here in America are being fed.
Yes.
By Cubans who were kicked out of Cuba by Fidel Castro. And the only reason why he had to kick them out of there is because they were abusing, misusing, and taking his country as a whorehouse. When he finished with his revolution, he came to America to ask for support and to align himself with America. America dismissed him.
Yeah.
Because the same people wanted to go back and take away the country from him. And they set up what eventually turned out to be the Bay of Pigs in the 1950s, 60s.
Yes.
That was before the Cold War.
59.
No, that was after. During. You said during.
It was during.
Yeah. The Cold War never finished till the 90s, actually.
Okay.
1990. Okay. And it started from way back, during when the Berlin Wall was set up.
Right after the Second World War.
Mr. Brackett, do you know, and I'm changing gears maybe a little bit, but do you know that the Bay of Pigs, I believe, was after the revolution, after the conquest by Fidel, I believe it was 1961.
Yes.
And Belize was a pawn in all of this in the sense that
yes.
They were trying to train some people
supposed to be trained.
Yeah.
Was supposed to be trained.
There was a bargain that was made.
And the U.S. under President Kennedy was going
before him
easy for Guatemala to have
before Kennedy. Truman.
Yeah.
You're correct on the issue and the points, but just the difference in the names of the person that you're calling out. The issue was discussed by Truman, and left
on the desk for Kennedy to execute.
No, Eisenhower. We're jumping too far back.
Yeah, you're going.
We're miss. Yeah. Eisenhower had some discussions, not him directly, but with other people in the administration, with the Guatemalans, so that the Guatemalans could train some of the exiled Cubans from Miami to go and try and take back Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And they were supposed to be trained in Guatemala.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In Petén and in parts of Guatemala where they had that naval base, because some of the people were supposed to be taken out there on submarine, and then turned out close to close to Cuba, out of the submarines, as part of the overall invasion process. The thing is that agreements was made, and I can't speak to all the details because I'm not privy to them, but I know enough about some of the details to have known that Guatemala was offered some assistance with trying to deal with the British, between the British and the Americans, which is what initiated that 13 proposal that became the 17 proposal that became the 13. Case of agreement that became all these other subsequent issues. The bottom line is that there was discussion to allow Guatemala some favorite results on the Belizean issue if they were willing to agree to have those people trained in Guatemala, which was close to Cuba and out of the limelights of the media here in America.
Mr. Brackett, I want to come to CY, but before I go
ahead, sir.
Just a part of history. Was there the 13 proposals and then the 17, or was it the 17
right.
and then
17 and 13?
No. 13 came first, which is what Mr. Golson exposed them to be. And then they changed the number to 17 to make him look stupid that he never knew what he was talking about.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
When Mr. Webster finally brought out the proposals, he brought out 17 instead of 13.
Okay. When was the 13? What year was the 13 proposal?
66.
Okay. And the 17 was at 67 or 68?
2 years later.
Okay. Very good. All right. I want to go to CY and get your perspective, CY, on the I want to say, I don't want to use the word failure, but the decision of the LU not to meet with the Cuban president, or not to be a part of the party that met with the Cuban president. What's your
that was my this was my question. That's what I was asking Mr. Morrison.
Yeah.
I mean that's what I was trying to find out too. I'm not really
understanding
that part of it. Oh wait, before we go,
let
me ask you. All right, a premier or a president have a staff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that should be advising them in certain, that should be, and this is one of the subjects that you brought up, George, a long time ago when we first started, about listening to advisors and taking into consideration what they're saying, qualified advisors. So my question is, why didn't the advisors say anything, or what? I don't understand. I don't understand the reasoning why.
Well, you see, one of the things, usually most people will let you have some insight who their advisors are in government, but we have none in Belize. We don't know who the advisors of any government is. We really don't know. I mean, we know the government, when you're in government, we know they have some CEOs and like that, but government usually have outside advisors, and sometimes they give you insight into who these
people that have technical knowledge.
Yeah,
that could be a help.
Yes. This came up a while
strategic.
ago. Mentioned that before.
I believe there's a point well made earlier that you said, and you're kind of repeating, which is good. You're reinforcing that the leader of the opposition, in his capacity, he's the leader of an institution that may well succeed the current government at some time into the future. It could be the next election. It could be sometime after that.
Right.
But he should have been exposed, and we don't know. He could have been exposed to cogent advice on the subject. But sometimes people don't listen to advice. They don't take advice kindly.
He has his own agenda.
Personally, I am a bit taken aback, because this is not the first time that he has made some utterances that were obtuse and that were nonsensical in relation to Cuba. I was heartened that the leader of the opposition actually did a year study along with Tracy.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he actually did a certificate for a year. And I believe it could have been endorsed by the University of the West Indies. A whole year
of government
political study.
Yes.
And I thought that a part of that would have been Caribbean history or Caribbean political history. And that should have brought in the Cuban Revolution and issues related thereto.
And Grenada and others.
I don't know if the leader of the opposition is oblivious to, or that wasn't a part of the curriculum. But I'm surprised that he hasn't either taken advice or hasn't schooled himself on the importance of Cuba in the historical and continued development of Belize.
Yeah.
I think
okay.
Very poorly on him.
Okay, all right. Let me ask you a question.
I think Mr.
If you align yourself, if you as a country like Belize, that we are not a big country. We got to keep this in mind. We are we are a small country.
Tiny,
we're a small country, surrounded by despots. So if you align yourself with Cuba, as we have always done, like Mr. Morrison has said, in the eyes of America, that's like a slight sometimes. I think. I'm not sure.
Well,
that's one of the reasons why you would like shy away.
That's an interesting point. But I want to ask Mr. Morrison to input, and then Mr. Brackett, and then I'll comment.
That is a good and valid point, that we have to be careful how we push, because large countries are always vengeful, and it's easy. They could do a simple little thing, and it changes.
They look at everything.
They look at everything. The dynamics. It could change the dynamics of a small, poor, little, sparsely populated country like Belize. But it doesn't mean, and I supported the Prime Minister Briceño when he came to America, and he met at the Conference of the Americas in Los Angeles, and he challenged in his face the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States that were sitting at the table, and said, we cannot have a Conference of the Americas where countries such like Cuba and Venezuela are not present. He said there are important issues that needs to be discussed. We cannot lock them out. We may have disagreement. We may have strong disagreement. We may have philosophical and ideological differences.
Before we move on, before we get to the next point, does this have anything to do with the prisoner that we accepted?
I don't think so.
I mean, that's another issue completely. But I'm just saying, does that have another, like? Is it an illusion? Does it show a shade somewhere? Do they look at that part of it, or how that comes into effect?
I think that's a separate topic, but I want Mr. Morrison to continue his thought.
Okay,
and if
go ahead.
Feels that he wants to fight together, then
okay, I apologize. Go ahead, Mr. G.
Yeah,
but I want to continue his thought process.
Yeah, I wanted to say that when the Prime Minister of Belize came and addressed that issue pointedly to the great United States, I had great appreciation for that. And yes, it does put you at, are we buffing the United States? And the answer is no. We're making a statement as an independent country that this is how we want to be treated. This is how we think affairs should justly be handled in the region and in the country. And no country should use its hegemonic power to just silence another country because they disagree. And for the most part, the United States would have agreed to let Cuba and Venezuela come, but because of these political secting that's happening and the election coming up, they didn't want to anger, in my opinion, the people of those areas, Cubans that votes heavily in Florida, and those type of people that could have changed or could have influenced the results. So even though they represent a small sector of things in the balance, it's a big political move if a president can clearly win Florida, with all the delegates. So it becomes a pretty political dance, and it's not always representative of what is the country's interests and what the leader of the country may be thinking, but he has to go with it because of the stooge relationship that we have with our election process.
Very good. So, Mr. Brackett, you want to weigh in there on this issue?
Just a little bit. The issue of the Cubans having such outsized and large influence in Florida which is a critical state when it comes to who wins the general election and or the presidency of this country, is very, very, it's unfortunate, because what the Cubans down there want has nothing to do with the well-being of the Cuban people as a people, even though they are also Cubans. What they want is to be paid for their assets or their farmer relatives' ownership of assets down in Cuba, as well as being able to go back to Cuba or get Cuba back under their control. In other words, it's like they have a government out here and waiting to go back to Cuba to take it over. Has been like that from the time the Cuban Revolution happened under Fidel Castro. And so, if any American president or any American politicians expect to make any headway in Florida, they got to go through these people. And these people are not forgiving, which is why that matter has stayed for over 50 years now and going, in regards to the Cuban being ostracized from the Americas, not only just from America, from the Americas. Guys, remember, it's the United States of America that controls the Organization of American States and sponsors them. And it is within that context why these countries that go afoul of America are ostracized. For example, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Cuba, and even at one point they were accusing Belize as being South and communism.
Haiti, all these people.
Very good. I want to go to CY, and then I'll comment on this point. CY, you have any inputs on this point of Belize basically standing up for Cuba, as I believe Mr. Morrison has said, at least in one context? You have any views before I weigh in? All right, you seem to have
Mr. Chairman, when you gave me my chance to make my comments, I didn't get a fair shot at finishing up what I was commenting on at the time, no, and I was waiting for an opportunity.
Sorry, Mr. Rocket.
If you don't mind, I would like to ask for an opportunity. I promise I won't make it too long, so we can go into the other points that you were trying to do. Back to the leader of the opposition. As far as I'm concerned, he's a disgrace to our country on this particular issue of not attending that meeting. He would not have done anything wrong or contrary to America's interest had he showed up just out of basic decency and civility.
Yes.
I'm not even going to go there. That was the simpler part of it. The bottom line is that he has his own agenda, and his agenda is to get into the good grace of America and burnish his credentials so he can get back to America to do his business up here and be successful, which he can't do successfully there in Belize. And he come hell or high water, whatever is going on, it's immaterial to his personal agenda. And that's my problem with him.
I agree with you, Mr. Brackett, that the leader of the opposition has done himself no good graces, either with the public or with his party. Even within his party, as we all know, he has a huge rebellion on his hands. I want to make the point that Belize is not isolated in terms of standing up with Cuba. Belize is a part of the Caribbean community that has very, very close to the point that Mr. Morrison made, that PM Briseno got up. A number of Caribbean leaders were expressing the same sentiments. I don't know if they did it at the conference itself, but leading up to the conference, I believe President Motley, Mayor Motley may have made statements. Recall also that Belize is a part of the Central American grouping of countries, and there has also been echoes that there has to be solidarity with Cuba and with Venezuela if you're looking at a regional approach to solving problems.
Yes.
There's also the Southern Cone. So I'm just reiterating the point that it's not that Belize is exposing itself unduly, but to Mr. Morrison's point, I believe that the Prime Minister of Belize has done himself well in the international community in terms of the one basically getting up to say to the United States, if you want to make maximum in terms of treating with the development and existential threats in the region, in the Americas, then you can't exclude certain political jurisdictions. I think it was the right thing to do, American domestic politics notwithstanding. I don't know how much more time we have, but I wanted to with your permission, go to one other issue, and that issue is that there's trouble in paradise. There has been some blowback from the unions in relation to a range of issues with the government. Today there was a sick out by by the unions collectively. At least the unions are allied with the government which would be the Public Service Union or PSU, the APSSM, the Association of Public Service Senior Managers, and the Belize National Teachers Union, the BNTU. It's coming to a head because of two main reasons. One, the issue being promulgated by the BNTU is that there are disquietude in relation to pension for teachers. There is a situation where the government is making its contribution to teachers that are retiring, but in the church school systems, the church is not living up to its obligations. And so the teachers union, and by extension, the other unions are basically saying that the government needs to intervene because the church school are their partners. So if this thing needs to be solved, then there's a need for public policy intervention.
Could I say something on that?
Yes, Mr. Morrison.
You know, I think there's a mix in how the church school policy, government policy, goes with government. And I think there's a mix of probably 60-40, where government pays 60% of the salary and the church pays 40% of it. And I think it is the responsibility, the government should make sure that the churches, organizations, are putting aside that portion of money for the teachers' pension. I don't think it should fall on the Belizean taxpayers to carry that. The church itself has wealth and they have resources, and they need to manage it in a manner and in a way that will ensure that they maintain that balance and of account, so that they can support their obligation or meet their obligation to the teachers. I don't think it should fall on the taxpayers to pick up that other 40%.
The problem is that the church.
Let me just say why I think so. Let me just say, complete one point I was thinking about that I didn't say. Because, you know, when we create a system of church school, government funding and church funding, they create a sort of an influence in our society that we would not normally have. And it may lead to more productivity, or it may lead to less productivity. And so if they can't meet their obligation, then they need to get out of the game and let the system function as it normally would, where it becomes a fully public type of system, and remove their influence of the church that in some may argue holds back a society from growth through many of its ideological issues.
Very good. So very good point, Mr. Morrison. Mr. Brackett, you want to weigh in on this issue?
Yes, sir. I was saying this. I was going to say basically the same thing that Mr. Morrison already said, no, but I was going to add the church. They are supposed to come up with some research to add to the tale. They cannot be exercising the prerogative and control of the church as a church school or public school controlled by the church and influenced by the church teachings, which is what really it's all about. The idea that the government got in the relationship with the churches was to help them, not to take over the full responsibility, while the church keeps control. And that is not right. These teachers deserve to have their money in place so that their money can work for them, so that when they retire, their retirement system can meet those obligations. Even the government right now is having a problem where they are not meeting. Well, I don't know if they are. Recently, the government was not meeting its own obligation to pay the retirees their money, and some of them owe money to shopkeepers and to house rent people and all different kind of, they weren't getting their money. Right. They already worked all those years, and now when they are retired, they need their money and they can't get it. While these guys are getting fat at the trough, that's immoral and unethical.
Right.
That's a big issue. That's a big issue. That's a big issue that's affecting America too, because the Republicans is talking about they want to cut off. Biden told them the last time they talking about cutting Social Security, cutting this, and cutting. I don't know.
And all of them that are talking like that, Mr. T.Y., none of them depend on it.
I'm glad the president in his last State of the Union address told them accountable and said, stand up if you will not support Social Security.
He caught them off guard.
No, stand up.
Yeah. They were like, oh. But they did.
But it was good because he had them against the wall and they had to make a commitment.
Yes,
that's a great point.
They didn't want to look stupid,
Yeah.
Mr. George, what you saying?
All right, so switching back to Billy, see why you want to input here on the subject? Okay.
No, I'm good.
Two things. One, I believe that the unions are calling for obviously a solution to this, and they're asking the government to sort of intervene along with the church.
But there should be a separation of church and business.
I take the point made by both Mr. Morrison and Mr. Brackett, that it's not only that taxpayers shouldn't assume that obligation, it's a significant amount of money you're talking about. And it's not instantaneous. It goes back years. Yeah. When I was a part of the public service, I retired in 2014. When I was a part of the public service, there was an actuarial study that was done in 2012. And that study basically said that the government non-contributory pension scheme would not be viable beyond 2019.
Wow.
We are now 2023.
Yeah.
It's 4 years we're going on, and it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Basically, there is no pension fund, quote unquote, that the government has. The government has a general revenue trough.
Yes.
That they dip into. The last time I looked at it, pension was public officers were retiring at the rate of 20 per month. And the wage bill, the aspect of the wage bill that dealt with pensioners was $90 million. That's a lot of money in a small economy.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would have mushroomed now. That goes back maybe 6 years. That would mushroom now to over $100 million.
Yeah.
And so the government has its own financial and political problems, because 4 years after the fact, after 2019, it is basically saying to public officers, we have to change the dynamics of this. There can be no more non-contributory pensions. You guys will have to input for your own security come retirement time.
And that's audible to request that, but they need to kind of actually build a system that will have the pensioners' contribution and government making an equal contribution and keeping that as a separate fund, similar to how Social Security is managed.
Yes.
Because
yes. So
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mr. Morrison. But I have another thought, but on the issues to the disquietude building. But go ahead, Mr. Morrison. Based on the point that you were making there.
Yeah. The government needs to set it up, I believe, so that it is separate, that they contribute, the pensioners contribute, and then keep it separate and manage in a proper way, so that the pensioners will have the confidence that the money will be there, and not only confidence, but that in fact the money will be there when it's time to draw down on that system. And it needs to be built in a robust way so that it is self-sustaining. The money needs to be invested properly. And we have had situations where I see right now with the Social Security, where it seems to me, even though that money is not needed because our population is well young, I see a lot of potential misuse in ways with some of those Social Security funds. We have known of it where it happened in the past, and I see them making investments again. And recently, I can't remember what it is right now, but when they made that particular investment, I was like, are we sure the Social Security fund will be able to recover this money? And is there a way to monitor and manage this money?
Yeah, you could bet some wrong, though.
Yeah.
For real?
It's serious. Because
oh my God.
And our actuarial, as Mr. Mivit said, is that the population is so young. Very few people is drawing on that. More money excess is coming in, but there'll become a point when it will turn. Another 15, 20 years, and many of those people that are contributing now will be drawing on that fund. And if the money is not invested properly, I'll agree with Social Security building parks and doing all those wonderful things and spending all this money and things, but it needs to be conscious, and it can't just be a piggy bank for government shortfall. When they can't do something, they go to the Social Security Fund and say, give out 500 scholarships. Scholarships is good because you hope that it is an investment in the young population, but it has to be measured. It cannot just be done nilly. It has to be done with actual calculations and formulas that shows how this money will be paid back or will be recovered in some way through population growth, population technological advancement, and so forth.
Well, it's a crisis, Mr. Morrison, because in terms of the quantum of monies that is involved. The last time I looked at it, when I was a part of the public service, the government basically says, historically, that there's about 12,000 public offices. In actuality, in the census, there were 19 to 20,000 people that were getting paid from the public purse. The government basically said 12,000 because that's a figure for the IMF. We do know that when an economy is in crisis, and I believe the economy has been in crisis now for a time, there's a narrative that goes to the IMF and the World Bank, and then there's the real narrative, which is at the time there were 19 to 20,000 public officers and teachers.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question on that point. Let me ask you a question. Isn't there a document that's produced by the government every year that shows every single employee and what their salary is for that past year?
Not necessarily, Mr. Morrison. I'm saying that because in government there are the open vote workers and there are the permanent established staff.
I see.
What the government basically traditionally does is to say that we have 12,000 public offices. But in actuality, at the time when I was in there's about 20,000 because there would have been 12 minus 20, there would have been 8,000 unestablished workers.
I see.
And then there are the teachers.
Those would have been contract workers of sort for government?
So, sorry?
I said those would have been like contract workers of that direct.
Not union.
Not contract workers, but contract workers included, Mr. Morris, So, for example, Mr. Morris, when I was at the Fisheries Department, at the point that I exited the Fisheries Department, we had a staff of 85.
Mm-hmm.
They were all permanent employees.
Yes.
Of that staff, we had about 30 established staff. So there were 50 people that were full-time that were not being counted as permanent established staff, but they were permanent staff, and they are permanent staff, and that situation has not been rectified.
Yeah.
And so it's across the service. That's a political problem, and it's an economic problem. Because if you're not established,
you're not counted.
The former prime minister had made a campaign promise where he said whether or not you establish, well, basically what he said is that everybody that is not on the established staff register will be brought on. I believe he made that comment for the election between 2008 and 2012. I think they demitted office in 2020 what?
21,
28.
2 years ago. 2 years ago.
Yeah. All right. So they have been carrying that burden, and it has not been fixed. My read of it 2 years ago, there are about 25,000 public officers.
Wow.
And this in 25,000, gone from 20 to 25,000. I was preaching to the converted when I talk about the national debt. The national debt as we know it was 130% of GDP. It means that if you added up all the services and all the productivity in Belize,
goods and services, yeah.
We owed more. We owed
30% more.
For every dollar that we made, we owed $1.30.
Yes.
According to the Prime Minister, we have brought that down to basically 65 cents to the dollar. I don't believe him.
No, I
believe
that you'd have seen
the book has to be cooked for that.
If that was true,
the economy has been growing at 1%, 2%, 3% at most, and there is no way that debt could have been brought down in relation to economic performance by basically 100%.
I thought he said the economy grew at like 15%.
Even at 15%, it still wouldn't equate into that.
I'm just clearing the numbers up because
you need
the numbers
to read the World
doesn't
Bank
connect.
report, Mr. Morrison and gentlemen. Every year there's a World Bank report that speaks to the performance of the economy of Belize. It also has prescriptions that people should read through.
Yes.
So it's a national crisis that has to be dealt with. The point that I wanted to make, the other point, Mr. Morrison and gentlemen, that I wanted to make is that the Public Service Union is in agitation mode. It's in agitation mode because it is saying that the salary cut that happened did not take into account increments. People were making increments every year. If you pass your performance appraisal, you get an increment in your salary.
Right.
And the Public Service Union is basically saying we have gotten that increment needs to be a part of our compensation package going forward.
Yes.
And basically the government is saying it's not going to happen. Going to do the next best. And so I believe that if it is not managed appropriately, we may be seeing some demonstration and perhaps some unrest in Belize, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I wanted to see how much time we have before I ask Mr.
I mean, you on timing right now? You on timing right now?
I wanted to ask Mr. Brackett to weigh in, and then I'll go to Mr. Morris and then see why. Mr. Brackett, you want to weigh in?
Yes, sir. To start with, the government would claim that they don't have the amount of money needed in order to meet those obligations. I would beg to differ. in the first instance, they're not collecting all the GST money that they're supposed to be collecting because they don't have a GST organization that is properly staffed to go out there and make sure that these merchants are delivering what they collect from the public.
Excellent point.
Secondly, these merchants are giving people, those who give receipts, by the way, not all of them, those who give receipts, there's some of them that are giving receipts to people on acid paper, where you print the receipt out, and within a few days later, the numbers and the information on the receipt is washed away or is acid off.
And they not to cut you across, Mr. I just want to qualify this, that those receipts that are given, when they are given, they are not itemized. Only if you go to Brothers,
right,
you get an itemized receipt. So you can't take them to court.
Yeah. And besides that, they're overcharging people for the items that they have in store, that they mark up the old item with the new prices. They're not giving people their full weight in measurement. They have a department they believe that's supposed to be looking into that, and they're not doing it. They sell people old stuff, and when you go back and try to complain to them about it, they say, well, they can't take it back because you don't open it, or you don't use it, or you don't whatever. You know, the people are being taken advantage of, and the government and the people running our governance are not paying attention and doing anything about it. So a lot of people are getting chance in so many different ways. Not to say the least that the young generation are not getting any little jobs. Like a long time ago, you could get one evening job after school or on weekend. There's nothing there for them.
You're gone off a whole different chapter, Mr.
Yeah. No, let me back off.
Mr. Brackett. Yeah. So you see the tragedy, Mr. Brackett, in terms of the issues that are haunting the public service in general.
Yeah. Let me weigh in there, Mr. Maivit.
Yes, Mr. Brackett.
Mr. Brackett is right. The government is losing revenues in so many different ways. The GST, the excise tax, property tax, all these are issues. And if we remember, I think it was the Barrow administration that forgave some $40 million.
90 million.
Big numbers.
$90 million in property taxes. And we need to kind of figure out our way through some of these things. We definitely need to figure our way out through some of these things. And it's not that I want government to collect more taxes from people, because what we have seen is that the more they collect, the more they waste in some instances. So until they set up a proper structure of making the money they collect accountable, I'm not so pushing for them to collect taxes. But they need to do both. They need to make sure that the money they collect from us find ways of being accountable and being used in useful ways.
I think that's what Mr. Brackett was saying.
Yeah, and then they need to...
I think he hit it on the head, yeah. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Accountability,
yes,
transparency.
Sir.
These things is not going to happen. It's wishful thinking, I think.
I hope it happens. If Belize is to prosper, if Belize is to move into the
direction we got to go in.
Advantage of becoming a developed country, a prosperous country, and we have all the resources. We have we have a very capable population that can make these differences. You know, and with more education, more training, less politicking, we can make great advancement in our country.
I agree.
And I think some time ago we said we need to start setting goals and agendas that are futuristic to kind of get to where we.
But we have to have. I think we have to have people like my friend Mr. George in some kind of capacity as an overseer or something, because I mean we need people who we could trust. Yeah, I think the trust issue is the big thing. I think people they say okay. Some people say okay, when they get into that position, they won't do the same thing but I mean it's a status quo. So when you become president, when somebody else, they seem to follow the same pattern.
Yeah.
You're going to break up that monopoly right there. How are you going to break up the monopoly?
Are you true, Mr. Morrison?
Yeah. I'm pretty much. Yeah, I'm true, sir. Thanks.
All right. Let me give you a real life on the point made by Mr. Brackett in relation to the system being, at least he spoke about understaffing. The last one of my brothers that migrated to the United States did so 30 years ago. He worked with the government for 17 years before he left. He is basically convinced that poverty and the issues related to the underdeveloped believes is engineered. To the point made by Mr. Brackett, I'll tell you that when I was in government, when I was a public officer, the entire south of Belize, had 2 GST officers, and this ran from Mango Creek all the way to Punta Gorda. One of them eventually got charged criminally. I see Mr. Morris, Mr. Brackett has his microphone off. One of them got charged criminally because he was found to have taken a bribe of $90,000. Mm-hmm. Long story short, he only got caught because somebody squealed.
Yeah.
But the situation is rife for corruption.
Yes.
And the merchant community, the Orientals, are known for that kind of behavior. The point that I want to make, and the point that I think Mr. Brackett alluded to, is that in our estimation, I was the president of the Association of Public Service Senior Managers. In our situation, we said that based on the information that we had, there should be no less than 15 officers for the South alone, not 2. And so I believe that until there's a political will and until there's a machination that identifies the quid pro quo arrangement between the merchant community and the politicians, this will continue. You have to have the political will to acknowledge, you know what? There's a problem here, and it's fixable, and we are willing to do what it takes to fix this. Obviously, a part of what the real tragedy is, there's an under collection of taxes on the one hand, and the larger problem that we have is that the politicians are in league with the business community.
Of course.
Who pays the taxes, especially income taxes, are the working class citizens. The working class citizens whose income can be traced. You know who those are? Those are the public officers and the teachers.
Yeah.
Much of the other working class people, that income cannot be traced.
Well, the other people that work with private companies,
the burden falls on a narrow group of people that are the dwindling middle class. That is, to a large extent, the working class people. A lot of them are being pushed now into poverty. The upper class, the 2%ers, they do not pay taxes. They do not pay their just taxes. They hire lawyers and accountants not to pay personal taxes. There are development games to basically say to them, you can continue to run a shell game on this country and not pay just dues. I don't know. I told people I would want to see the tax return of one Mr. Cashcroft. I could almost bet.
I thought I heard you mention that before.
They actually gave Mr. Ashcroft tax holiday that cost the country an extra $15 million when the British government reversed.
Okay, gentlemen, we got to wrap it up. We got another couple minutes to close. We got a couple minutes to close.
Mr. Mavitt, Mr. Chairman.
All right, with your permission, Mr. CY.
Now, Mr. Brackett could continue. Mr. Brackett could say. No, Mr. Brackett could continue.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yes, sir. Okay, and I'll take long. I'm trying to cut it short. I just came back from Belize, having spent 10 weeks in Belize doing my annual investigation.
Your annual retreat?
Every year, I do an annual investigation of my country in the area of economics, education, and these things that we're talking about, politics and everything else. But the bottom line is that the results show that the very same thing I pointed out earlier about the government not collecting these different taxes is what's causing the drain out of the coffers of the government to the point where we have to depend on Taiwan to supplement the budget.
Yes.
Sorry.
Excuse you.
And other countries, which is why we are so indebted to these countries like Venezuela, who give us money, Cuba, who give us personnel and assistance, medical assistance and educational assistance and other things. Taiwanese who give us so many millions of dollars every year for help with budget balance.
Yeah.
And we get only donations and stuff from the American government in small areas. But a large percent, almost 1/3 of the budget of our country is provided to our country by we, the people who are out here in the States, with remittances. Sorry. With remittances and payments that we pay taxes to the government for different reasons. And at the end of the day, we are all being chanced. Because if the government is collecting its fare on its due, the amount that is due, then you have to increase. Because I think that's the point that Mr. Morrison was driving at, increasing the government taxes. They just need to collect what is due to them right now. And unless some people go to jail, including some politicians and some merchants, and some of the civil servants them at the higher level where they corrupt the other younger civil servants them to run racketing with different departments them, the country can just continue getting worse and worse and worse. Because everybody cover for everybody else.
All right, Mr. Brackett, can I, we have to tie up. You want to conclude in a minute or so?
I did.
All right. Mr. Morrison, any concluding thoughts briefly?
No, I think I'm good for now. Thank you.
All right. I want to say that as per normal, this has been a very informative and entertaining show, educational for sure. And I want to thank our panelists for making the time and for inputting eruditely as they have. I want to thank also our producer, CY, who continues to do a yeoman's job. I want to also thank the audience for tuning in. I want to make an appeal that we keep the chairman in mind. I think I'm sure that he's not at death's door. He probably has a little infection or something that he has to deal with. But I'm asking you to keep him in your prayers, and hopefully we'll have him back on station next week. Okay. Thank you, and a pleasant good night to everybody.
Thank you. Pleasant good night to you too, and the rest of the panelist members. And thank God for the privilege accorded and the opportunity to
and we pray
present some additional information.
You did a good job. You did a good job, Mr. Mavitt, but we want our chairman back.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Okay, gentlemen, we good, right?
Yes. Excellent job, Mr. Mavitt.
Yeah, have a great night, man. Thank you guys so much, man. It was educational.
Thank you again, sir.
Good evening.
I think our next premiere should be Mr. Mavitt, and then on the committee, on the thing we're gonna have Mr. Brackett, or maybe Mr. Brackett will be the one.
You gonna have them kick him off that kick him off that commission, you know. He's no longer part of that commission.
So next Wednesday, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Next Wednesday.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a good night, guys.
All right. Good night.
Nice.
Mr. Brackett, you got to get rid of that cough you got. I don't know what's that.
Yeah, about. I do. Yeah.
All right. Take care of yourself, man.
Good night.
Okay.
Best wishes to the chairman.
Very good.
I heard some things in there tonight that would have get him kind of a little upset, but it's okay.
All right, guys.
All right, guys. Peace.
Good night.
triple like Fandango. You'll turn a lot of shade of pale. I ain't afraid of no ghosts, another brag, another boast. East Coast, West Coast, anniversal. I'll leave you stuck at rehearsal. Reversal of fortune. Time to let the light shine like the Neptune. Then evap to the boondock. Still keep it in the car. Still be gritty. Still be nutty. The only reason to blow through the city is to scramble brain dead challenges. I'm bullets like Wall Street. Gorgeous or battlers like ballistic heat. I keep it constant, consistent, potent. It's with bad intent I spit. Us, let them know. Lots of goons moving. If I can't dazzle them with brilliance, I'll have to baffle them with bullshit. I'm here setting trends, believe it.
Living in a Bobby wrong, I don't know nice. Life no have no value, but debt's got a fight. What's all? 2 foot mice, because planting no they eat like rice. Living in a Bobby wrong, I don't know nice. Life no have no value, but debt's got a price. What's all? 2 foot mice, planting no they eat like rice.
You no see nothing yet, you no hear nothing yet, you no know nothing yet. You better not tell nothing yet. You want to know how somebody not dead yet? Eradicate all threats. Oh.
Living in a Bobby wrong, I don't know nice. Life no have no value, but debt's got a price. What's all? 2 foot mice, because planting no they eat like rice. Living in a Bobby wrong, I don't know nice. Life no have no value, but debt's got a price. What's all? 2 foot mice, planting no they eat like rice.
Surviving to me, it's my Kongan achievement. Now my main objective is just to stay on the pavement. I see cats go from showity to obscurity. Self-inflicted mental enslavement. All I ever needed was just a little taste. No, I'm after the paper like Gregory at Chase. The industry is trying to welcome me back like Mace. All bad boys, don't watch your face. I'm getting into cats' pockets before they go get in mine. I spit 82 bars before the replay could bust a rhyme. And the moms of shine is like a moms of mine. Big ups for all my cats on the grind. Rapping ain't easy, but I've done put in my bid. It's like the devil's playground, you can't be scared or timid. One life I've got, many lives I'll give. Cold talk, you know, we keep it frigid. BX 168 Gerard, but I treat the Big Apple like yard. We could do this my way, we could do this hard. Back off slowly or start talking to God. If it ain't assets or plastics, you ain't got no money. If it ain't high grade, you're not rolling the bunny. If it ain't meta, it ain't sweet like honey. All thanks to Jah, even my nights is sunny. You could have $1 in a dream, but you've got to be asleep. You could be the president, you just got to pick the right beat. You can't